What's going on, guys? Welcome back to BigTrainHawaii's YouTube channel, and welcome to the brand new train layout. I'm really excited to finally have this train layout up and going. It's been a long process of, well, since a year and a half since I had last had the old 8x12 layout. And I have to say, this layout invokes a bit of the old 8x12 as well as some new stuff that is going to be talked about in this video. I really have to say, getting this layout to this point was definitely a struggle with me moving into this house, and at the same time I've been a little bit more busier with work, and just trying to find time to really work on this layout has been a challenge. But I have to say, through me keep coming down here and trying to do something, whether it be like 5 minutes of work or even a full day, getting this layout to this point is really exciting, because I can say that after a very long time having the trains running again, it feels really great. Definitely was a struggle to get this layout to this point. And as I said earlier, I will be talking a little bit about what those challenges were. At the same time, I'm just going to go over briefly of what is sort of different and what is going to be new on this layout as opposed to the old 8x12. As you guys see in these videos here, the trains are actually running very well with the new track system, as well as the new setup that I kind of have planned for this layout. And it's still not finished, and this thing will never be finished. But anyways, everything is running great and it's looking all good. So we're going to take a little trip back to the old 8x12 first to go about how that layout sort of ended, and then how that layout story transferred into this layout. So hope you guys are ready, because this is going to be a good video and I hope you guys enjoy it. So here we are back at the old 8x12. This was shot in July of 2023, which was the last time that this layout was ever operative. I was getting ready to do a little bit more work on the layout. As you guys can see, the roadbed was coming together real nicely, and I was ready to start doing some rock work on my mountains. But in life, things don't really work out as they planned, and unfortunately, there were some things that happened in my personal life that took precedence over this layout. And one of the things that came of this layout was that I would have to take it down, because I was actually going to be moving into my grandmother's house, which was adjacent to this house. So a few weeks after filming that shot, I immediately tore the layout down, because, well, this layout was coming with me, and I really had no idea when or if I'll be able to get to building this layout again, because, well, I wasn't too sure. So I was getting everything ready for storage and just tearing up all my work that I've done on this layout. And granted, it was sad, and it was a sad thing, but it was also kind of I would say a good thing. But I think the good would come once I start building a newer layout. But I really did not know at the time when that was going to happen. But yeah, I just kind of took it with a grain of salt and just kept moving forward. And, eventually the new layout will begin, and I will just be happy, be getting the trains, getting them a place to run, and having myself a place where I can just come and, you know, play with trains. So a little while after I kind of got moved into this house and everything made its way over here, I decided to set trains up on the floor for a little bit, just so I could run some of my newly equipped three-row scale engines. Uh, Here's a shot of my MTH Proto 3 Class A that was three-row scaled, and it's pulling a fair share of NW stuff that was three-row scaled, from hoppers to the passenger cars. And that kind of kept me going as far as working on the trains, but building the layout was a little bit more of a time will present itself with the time to build a layout. So I was just waiting, and at the same time just continuing on with these conversions of my equipment to 3 rail scale. So in March of 2024, I got the okay from my family to go ahead and build the new train layout in this downstairs room of my grandmother's house. I started with bringing over the 8 by 12 tables that were originally built and try to figure out where they were going to be placed in this room. One thing that I wanted to do with these tables was to give them a much more of a sturdier base. So I went ahead and I got rid of these risers that were on the table originally and put on much more beefier risers. And these risers definitely helped because I was able to level off these tables a little bit more. They gave me more spacing and such, and they just do the job a lot more better than those older risers. Here you can see one of these tables was actually getting a foot of it cut off, so that way I could get more accessibility because this table is going to be laid up against this wall over here. I decided to go with a black base for the tabletop, so that way it would blend in a lot better with my scenery and for my row bed too. And couldn't go wrong with just having a plain wood base because that's pretty much an easy target for termites. One of the newest features of this layout was that it was going to be featuring an S-curve made completely of Atlas flex curves. And as you can see here by this little test that I was doing, you can see that the curve was a lot more broader than what you would find from stock Atlas track or any track system in that. My Class A took a little spin on the track, and I got to tell you, I love seeing no overhang, especially on these big articulated locomotives. So for this new layout, I decided to go with a brand new track system, which was Atlas Nickel Silver Track. I just felt it was time for me to upgrade to something that was a little bit more realistic and something that I think I would get a little bit more enjoyment out of than using the fast track. Here in this picture, you'll see that I had a little bit of struggle with trying to get the curve laid out right, so that way I could at least have my articulates pass without them hitting a train on the opposing track. So by respacing the track as well as taking out a few sections, I was able to get the curves to where they're about 5 inches apart from center rail to center rail. So now my articulates won't be able to hit the trains on the opposing track if they were running on the inside loop. Now this table right here was the very last table to go into this room. This was one of the old tables from the 8 by 12, and it really was a great feat to finally have this table in here because now I knew where I was going to be landing everything when it came to connecting all the tables into one giant layout. As we go around here, we're going to be looking at how the layout is looking at this point. So I had the big broad curves over here, which was 090 and 081. And then it will go to this nice little short straightaway. And then on the inside loop, there was a switch that was going to be a yard lead. And as we go around, we come into the first start of the S curves. So from there, we move into the big flex curves. And as we go around, the flex curves will continue on. And then from there, the curves just end over there. But right there, that's where I was going to be joining that track to the opposing track that was going to be set on that table. So that way I would have one giant loop with an S curve. As progress on the layout continued, I got a few things in for me to continue on with my modeling, as well as being able to start on a few other projects. One of the things that I got in was my air compressor, as well as an airbrush kit. And then the next thing was this background. The background started by building the frame so that way I could mount the 1/8 fiberboard. I used the 1x3s and then just made a simple framework that I could just screw the fiberboards to. I was able to get a nice cove or bend in the fireboards. That way, it was flexible, and I was able to round it off so that way it followed the contour or the lines of the table. The background that I chose for this layout was a based on a fall theme. I like the colors, the oranges, the reds mixed in with the little yellows and the greens, and just blend it all in. And then, of course, it had to be a mountain theme because my layout is solely based on the lower Appalachians and coal country, and it fits the my trains very nicely. So by choosing this, I was able to continue on with these efforts for an Appalachian line. Here, my C&O Berkshire and my NNW Y6B is posed right up against it. These pictures look really great. I jumped right back onto the bench work after the background was up, and I want first things that I started was to connect the two tables at the back together. So by using whatever leftover wood that I had from previous projects, I was able to get this up and going. Bought a 4x8 sheet and dropped it in place. Another thing that I was continuing on with was my conversion of all my rolling stock and engines to 3 rail scale. Here are a sampling of some of the freight cars that I worked on while I was continuing or waiting on supplies from my layout building. These O-scale Katy couplers look a lot better proportion on my O-scale equipment. Progress went back to the layout, and I soon began prepping this table for paint, as well as figuring out how I was going to lay out the curved track. The paint that I use primarily for the entire layout is a enamel-based paint. Here you can see the 090 and the 081 curve hanging off the table, and this created a little problem that I had to resolve. So as I was building this layout, the one thing that I wanted to do was to have people come and see this layout. And unfortunately, there is a problem with getting people to come in and looking at this layout is that I would have a small little space for only like a few people to come in and really see this layout. So after going back and forth, I decided to make the decision and actually redo this section of the layout right here. And that is to bring the table off the wall and bring it more towards the center of the layout. This would in turn change the complete design as well as a redo of the background. Sorry for the mess, but this is what the layout pretty much looked like before I started ripping that table off. So I started by just demoing the table. I was able to salvage the bench work and move it more towards the center of the room. By getting the table in its position, I was able to continue on with figuring out how the track was going to get laid out. The thing for this setup was that I had to downsize the curves, so I went with 081 on that table back there, and then the minimum curve on the inside had to go down to 072, which wasn't a big deal because I could still run my articulateds on the minimum 072 radius. By lining up the tracks again and figuring out how to make sure my articulators were able to pass without them hitting my opposing trains on the opposing track. That took a little bit again. Got it down to about 5 inches or so from center rail to center rail, and then working the flex curves again. That was a fun little challenge, but in the end, it worked out really nicely, and I got myself a really nice big curve that worked out. Working with the Atlas Flex Track was a fun little challenge, and I gotta say, it takes a little bit of patience to get your end results, and the results of this really worked out. I use a lot of these Atlas 3-tie track pieces to connect my Atlas Flex Track together. After each section of track was cut, I installed these. That way I could keep the track's rigidity intact and would help with connecting with other Atlas track sections. As I said, patience was the main key to working with the track, and the end results was by looking at this picture of my Y6B on the curve, it looks a whole lot better. Here we see two trains run on the flex curves, my Y6B on the inside loop and my Jeep 9 on the outside loop. With the bench work and track work almost done, it was time for me to start electrical. And the first thing that I wanted to do was to get out my brand new MTH Z4000 transformer. This little shelf over here will house the MTH Z4000 as well as display my MTH TIU and my Lionel Cab 1L. The power from the Z4000 will be distributed into these two MTH terminal blocks. One terminal block will be wired for track 1, the other will be labeled for track 2. Power is evenly distributed throughout the entire layout through these terminal blocks. My MTH DCS will be the main controller of this layout, while the Lionel Legacy Cab 1L will be piggybacked off the TIU. The entire layout will be completely command controlled, although I will be wiring up the variable channel so that way I can run conventional engines on this layout. The wiring on this layout was pretty straightforward. I just soldered the wires directly to the Atlas track and then wired it all back down to the terminal blocks. One thing that I do want to know is that when you use the Atlas track, just make sure that all your track connectors as well as your wiring is all in good shape. When I did the first fire up on some of these engines and running them around the layout, there were some hiccups in the road, as well as some of my engines didn't like running through the switches. By doing this little simple fixes such as wiring direct jumpers to the switches as well as pinning down the bad track connectors, I was able to get the operation a lot more smoother and better. It's still not perfect, but then again, not everything on a model railroad is perfect, but it's working. With the layout now being operating, I decided to jump ahead and start messing with placement of my buildings, as well as trying to figure out what am I going to do for scenery. I'm just still trying to piece together what I can really do, because for this setup, it's going to be a lot more different than I was with my previous layout. But as I'm making this video, I have some ideas already of what I'm going to do, but that'll all be in future videos that'll be coming next year. In the meantime, however, I'm just going to be enjoying running my trains again and just seeing what else that I can really do with my trains before the end of the year, because that's where I'll probably be starting on the major scenery work as well as finishing up some areas of the layout where I need to finish out the track laying and do some additional wiring and such. But for the most part, it's great to have the trains running again and just making these videos so that way I can enjoy them as well as share them with all you guys so you guys can enjoy them. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Going into the next year of 2025, I'm really going to be focusing on mostly scenery as well as doing some other fun stuff in the 3-rail scale game for my trains. But for the most part, next year is going to be the year of scenery for me for this layout. I really am looking forward to what ideas that I kind of have brewing in my head, as well as seeing what you guys think of these crazy ideas that I have going on. But for the most part, I'm really excited for what's to come next year for this layout. Getting this layout up was definitely a challenge, from taking down the old 8x12 to slowly getting this layout up and going. But I gotta say, having this layout up again and being able to run trains again, just it's just a really great feeling. Thanks again for watching, you guys. Until next time, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys in 2025. Aloha.